I'm Terry Springs. It's Talking Solutions. Right now we are recapping a few of the things that happened in this year's Nevada State Legislature, especially in the areas of energy. I want to welcome back our good friend Jennifer Taylor, our clean energy expert.
Thank you, Terry. I appreciate that.
And you are the State Policy Advisor for the Clean Energy Project?
I am. I do state policy advising and consulting for Clean Energy Project as well as Advanced Energy Economy and some electric vehicle state policy advising as well.
All good things. I love electric vehicles.
Yes.
Jennifer, it actually is the state legislature and what happened during this last session up in Carson City. That's what I'm curious to know about. What has happened with clean energy that will impact our lives as citizens of Southern Nevada?
Well, we had an unbelievably energetic, no pun intended, session for energy bills. There were 11 bills presented that really were going to impact Nevadans, how they used energy, how they could control their energy usage, what opportunities we would be able to provide to all Nevadans for accessing clean energy. 9 of those 11 bills passed. The 2 bills passed out of the legislature but vetoed out of the governor's office. There are still issues that we're working on. I also serve on the governor's Committee on Energy Choice, which, if you'll remember from when we talked last year, the Energy Choice Initiative was a ballot measure that would open up the market for consumer choice in their energy supply. He wanted to make sure that our committee worked on the 2 issues that he vetoed, which were renewable portfolio standard and community solar, a little bit more as we headed into a second vote on that initiative to determine whether or not we would indeed have an open market for retail competition in energy supply. So let me just kind of run through some of these bills and let you know how they will have the ability to impact Nevadans. And I think the one that most people are going to be most interested in is Assembly Bill 405, the bill intended to fix rooftop solar and some of the issues that had arisen in 2015 and early 2016 with the payback structure from the Public Utility Commission. You and I have talked about it a couple of times in rooftop solar and how that's really been one of the driving forces behind a lot of the coverage and awareness and activism that we've seen in the clean energy sector. AB 405 was jointly sponsored by a whole host of fantastic legislators. And let me step back for a second and say that part of the reason we had such an amazing session legislatively was through the help of clean energy champion legislators like Assemblyman Chris Brooks, Senator Patricia Spearman, who's amazing, Senator Calvin Atkinson, who chaired the Senate Commerce, Labor, and Energy Committee. But then we had some new legislators who were really eager to be part of this discussion on access to clean energy options and to energy efficiency for everybody. People like Assemblyman Justin Watkins, Assemblyman William McCurdy II, Assemblyman Ozzie Fumo, everybody who sat on the Assembly Commerce and Labor Subcommittee. And we got a lot of bipartisan support for these bills. AB 405 with a significant number of votes from the minority. Also, every single bill that came out of the legislature had bipartisan support in some way or another. This is really an issue that matters for Nevadans because it matters to our economy and to our economic opportunities. So if you are someone who thinks that you wanted to get rooftop solar and you thought, I'm never going to be able to get rooftop solar, it's not going to pay back enough, it's not going to be a fair valuation of my solar, what AB 405 did was set rates for your credits on what you put into the grid if you get rooftop solar. Those rates are not one-to-one credit in, credit out like it used to be under the original system, but it is much closer to that and it's tiered. So you have 2 things. Your payback is going to be a percentage of retail as opposed to just a 1-for-1. And as the rooftop market continues to grow, you will see smaller paybacks on those later installed systems. So this is a good opportunity if you've been holding back on getting rooftop to get a system put in place and lock in your rates now. The other thing that is really important for the rooftop solar discussion is that this bill, AB 405, set this rate structure. It also provided a series of statements about the rights of folks to generate, consume, and export their renewable energy to reduce their individual use of electricity and to be able to really take advantages of technologies as they move forward. That's great, but the other thing that's really important, and in my former life, as you know, Terry, I did construction defect consumer protection work.
Right.
And when you have a company coming out to work on the largest investment in your life, you want to make sure that there's protections for you as a consumer. Protections in the construction, protections in the contracting. And so 405 also sets forth a significant number of consumer protections and allows homeowners, consumers to be able to directly bring an action against their installers for violations of the provisions in this bill. Before, a Deceptive Trade Practices Act violation could only be brought through the Attorney General. Now it can be brought directly by the consumer.
Assembly Bill 405 sounds like it had a lot of good things in it, especially for those of us who are interested in solar power for our homes.
That's right. It really did. And the other thing that was really great about it, it was really a collaborative effort by all the stakeholders. And it was really a political priority to get this passed, to make sure that jobs could come back, to make sure folks could have the ability to get rooftop if they wanted to. And currently, there's also an implementing docket at the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada, which for those who really are interested in the wonky stuff, you can go to the PUCN website and look for docket number 17-07026. You can go back and look and see the discussion between the utility, solar advocates, and the commissioners on how 405 and its rate structure will be implemented for the public.
And you know that, like always, I will put that information on the Talking Solutions Facebook page so that people aren't having to jot notes right now. It's like,
Absolutely.
Where's my paper?
Yeah, 405 was probably one of the key bills that we passed and signed. There were a couple of other bills related to access for more people to clean energy, because even with rooftop solar, one of the concerns is that a huge number of rooftops and or homeowners can't get rooftop solar because they can't afford it. They don't have the credit to lease it. They don't have the proper orientation. They don't have enough efficiencies in their home. And there's debate about whether or not a lease for a rooftop system is really as good as being able to purchase it outright. There were some concerns about the lease model, I think, that led to some of the consumer protections in the contracting in AB 405. So what was also enacted were two things: the PACE bill and the Green Banks bill, Assembly Bill 5 and Senate Bill 407. Those bills both let structures be put into place to facilitate loans for investment in your property of clean energy systems like rooftop, like energy efficiency, those kinds of things where you may not have normally been able to have access because of your credit, because of your commercial building, super restrictive lending programs. Those bills are both in the implementation process as well. Green Banks is a really unique, innovative set of programs that only exist in a few other states, which again puts Nevada in a leadership position. That would allow residential folks to be able to access programs to increase efficiency and obtain clean energy upgrades to their homes.
Yay!
Yay! The governor is currently working on putting together the first Green Bank board, and then there's still work to be done on PACE implementation, and PACE sort of provides the same set of options for commercial owners as opposed to residential owners. Then we also had a good number of energy efficiency bills that came out to talk about energy efficiency programs, to give direction to the Public Utility Commission to make sure that they were providing a broader view of how they approve energy efficiency programs, so that it's not just a program by program cost effectiveness, but it's a portfolio of programs. And then the biggest piece of these two energy efficiency bills was the fact that they both seek carve-outs of 5% of the program cost allocations to go directly to low-income Nevadans. Because again, when you look at the disparity of who can access clean energy and clean energy investments, lower-income folks spend a significantly larger proportion of their income on their energy usage as opposed to middle income and upper income. So they don't always have the opportunities to afford the very things that could help them save on their energy bills. That's what these two energy efficiency programs that we're hoping will address. That's Assembly Bill 223, sponsored by Assemblyman McCurdy, and then Senate Bill 150, sponsored by Senator Pat Spearman.
I like the fact that the last session of the Nevada State Legislature earlier this year, it sounds like they were doing a lot of work implementing things that will help us get more clean energy into our environment.
They absolutely were. They did that because, to a large extent, that's the vision and the direction of the governor and the state's Office of Economic Development. There were also a couple of bills that came out of Governor Sandoval's New Energy Industry Task Force that had been convened in 2016. Senate Bill 65, an integrated resource planning bill, which would essentially prioritize clean energy in the long-term planning process that's done by the PUC. There was also a planning bill that was Senate Bill 146, also from Senator Spearman, that would require the PUC to consider distributed energy resources like rooftop solar when they are doing that long-term planning. And then there were a couple of bills to talk about incentivizing storage because we know that storage is the next big frontier.
Yes.
We can put up as much solar as we want, but we can't run off of it. We can't run our homes and businesses and our computers and our phones and our TVs off of solar after the sun goes down or if there's an eclipse.
And that actually had an impact.
It did actually in some places. It was interesting because they did studies and they showed that the grid was actually able to manage and hold on to reliability despite the eclipse. So that's good to know that grid infrastructure has been taken into consideration as those kinds of phenomena happen. But storage really is going to allow us to take those intermittent resources like wind and solar and use them in the best way possible in terms of maintaining grid reliability, not overstressing our grids, not wasting those resources because we generate so much in the peak hours, but then it just goes nowhere because there's nowhere to hold it. So really working on incentivizing storage is going to be a fantastic thing. And those bills include Senate Bill 145 and Senate Bill 204. Both of those are going to be also at the PUC for work and implementation. That's kind of a quick roundup of some of the bills we saw come through the session. AB 206, which was the Renewable Portfolio Standard, and SB 392, which is community solar. Those were both vetoed, but the Commission on Energy Choice will be looking at those. And more specifically, the working group that I chair, which is called Innovation and Technology and Renewable Energy Development, we are tasked with coming up with recommendations for integrating those two items into a new energy market. And for anyone who wants to follow the Committee on Energy Choice, you can find all the information on the Governor's Office of Energy website. You go to programs and it'll say Committee on Energy Choice, and you can look at all the minutes, listen to all the old hearings, and be part of that process.
I like the fact that Governor Sandoval obviously is friendly to the idea of clean energy. He's shown it over and over again, and the state legislature is very open to talking and getting us bills and passing legislation that benefits us as clean energy consumers. And I love the term that you used a couple of times during our discussion, bipartisan. That is a phrase that I don't hear in politics enough.
No. And we are so fortunate here in Nevada to have had this relationship from both parties because there's really no question that decarbonizing our grid is the right thing to do. We've talked about this before. Nevada has no native fossil fuels. So we import everything. So why wouldn't Nevada be working on clean energy? So for those from the progressive flank, it makes sense for the environment. For those who may be more conservative and are more concerned about the impact on the economy, it helps Nevada's economy. It's created billions of dollars of investment and tens of thousands of jobs. And Governor Sandoval really wants to see this state be a net exporter, meaning that we are sending out more to our neighbors than we are using. But he also wants us to be the leading consumer and producer of renewable energy. And as somebody who's watched this over 10 years, it is great to have someone like Brian Sandoval really leading the charge on making Nevada the innovator, the leader, the true champion of clean energy in the West and the nation.
The future looks pretty darn bright when it comes to clean energy.
It's a very sunny forecast here in Nevada for clean energy.
Nevada is a very clean energy friendly state. It works for us. We have a lot of resources, and it ends up benefiting us in the way of money and jobs. And it sounds like we're on a really positive road. Jennifer Taylor, I want to suggest that you visit us to keep us up on what's happening with clean energy in the state of Nevada because you are our clean energy expert.
I appreciate that. There's really so much that is going on in Nevada in terms of clean energy work at the city level, at the county levels, at the state level, at the corporate level with individuals. And so I really think that that would be fantastic, Terry, and I'm looking forward to having an ongoing and regular conversation with you about what the state of clean energy is in our state.
I can't wait. Thank you so much for coming in to join us today on Talking Solutions. Of course, like always, all the information, links, and everything will be on our Talking Solutions Facebook page, along with a podcast of our discussion. Thank you, Jennifer. Come back and see us and keep us up on what's happening in Nevada with clean energy.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Thanks for coming in.